Hello, I am Sarah. I'm an aspiring author. Happy April, happy spring. I feel like springtime is actually the new year for me. January, February, I guess March as well. Even though that's technically the beginning of the year, that's kind of when I'm crashing out, when I'm exhausted, overthinking, all that business. And then spring hits, and I'm like, you know what? I can do anything. I can write a novel. I can clean my entire house. I am invincible. We'll see how long that lasts. I do have plans starting this month regarding my novel, so I definitely intend to make sure this enthusiasm lasts. For now, let's talk about the books that I read in March. I didn't read as much as I wanted to last month, but the things I did read, they were some good ones. So let's get right into it. Okay, confession time. I am not the biggest fan of high fantasy. I don't consume a lot of high fantasy books, TV shows, movies. I was never into Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. Friends tried to get me into it, just wasn't happening. I tried reading ACOTAR. It sorry, it just was not my thing. Friends again gave me hell for that. But what can you do? You like what you like. I mainly read contemporary when I'm stretching it, when I want a bit of magic. I read contemporary fantasy. I love contemporary fantasy, magical realism. But I know, of course, there are so many amazing fantasy books out there, and I do feel like I'm missing out. So I've been slowly trying to read more, like dip my toe in it and just see what I like. That's what I did in March, and starting with The Demon and the Light by Axio. This is actually a sequel to The Floating World, which I read last year. I really enjoyed. I've enjoyed all of Axio's books. This one is a Korean fantasy based off of the Korean folktale The Celestial Maiden and the Woodcutter. In the first book, the heroine, Ren, she has these light powers that have to do with light. And then the hero, Sunho, he has these dark powers, opposites. He has this demon inside him that he feels and that he feels like he can't completely control. So these two, they both have their own personal missions. And then they come across each other. They decide to kind of go on the journey together to get what they need. Ren needs to help her uncle, who's fatally wounded, and Sunho is trying to look for his brother. Of course, most everything in the sequel is spoilery, so I won't say too much, but the romance definitely levels up. There are some epic battles, very epic relationship dynamics, just very, very cool. I loved the world building. I loved magical powers and how, the light and dark powers were kind of clashing, but in some ways working together. So, yeah, I really, really loved this. The next book is A Stage Set for Villains by Shannon J. Spann. And this is a dark fantasy all about the theater. This book has immortal beings called the players. They're actors. And they're kind of these scary godlike figures who just have all these mortals in fear. These players thrive off of performing, they thrive off of the attention, and some of the humans, they really worship these figures, but then there are people like our heroine who absolutely hate them. And it's because the heroine, Riven, not sure how to pronounce, but When she was younger, she was cursed by a player. She's now slowly dying. And now she's seeing that the only way she may be able to live is to go into the playhouse where the players live and try to compete, to audition in their show in order to gain immortality. So yeah, concept alone, it just seemed so unique, so cool. I really love this author. I've been following her on socials for a long time before she published this. She had this channel called Grumpy Reads where she would just post funny videos. She also works for Penguin Random House as a social media manager, I believe. Creates great content on there as well. And so I was really looking forward to her debut, and it did not disappoint. It is wildly fun, wildly, again, unique. I feel like this type of fantasy, because it is so unique, it is very complex at times. It did feel a little convoluted, although when I read fantasy like this, I am just wondering, am I just dumb? Am I just not understanding? So, this might be one that I'll have to reread to get a full grasp on, and totally fine with that. I would love to read this again. This next book, the next 3 books actually, I was really excited about. Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Lynn Jones. Now, Howl's Moving Castle, the animation, I love so much. I watched it when I was young. A friend introduced it to me, and I just thought it was the best thing ever. For years and years and years, I was wanting to read the book that it was based off of, and I just never got around to it. I thought, now's the time. I want to get into fantasy. Here we go. So, Howl's Moving Castle. I love it. We follow the heroine Sophie, who is a hat maker. She lives an ordinary life. She longs for more, much like Belle, Beauty and the Beast, sort of. And she gets cursed by a witch, and her outer appearance becomes an old woman. And she's like, well, I can't stay at home. I guess I'll just leave, venture out. And she's very matter of fact about it. I really liked the humor and whimsy here. But yeah, she decides to just leave her home. And then she stumbles upon the moving, walking castle of the wizard Howl. So the friend who introduced me to the animated movie, she also told me that the book and the movie were actually pretty different, but that they somehow work pretty well together. And when I finally read this, I definitely got what she meant by that. Some things were almost like word for word identical, and then some things did like veer off in different directions. And I liked certain things that the book did, but I also preferred certain things that the movie did. The main thing being, I kind of liked that the romance was a bit more of a focus in the movie. I love my romance. So, yeah, I loved Sophie and Hal. I also loved the book versions of them. I thought they had a very fun, just chaotic dynamic. And then in honor of Howl's Moving Castle, I also have this little Calcifer coaster. He's so cute. He's keeping my tea warm. The follow-up to Howl's Moving Castle, Castle in the Air, it felt like a weird turn. Like, it almost felt like it wasn't a part of this series. But anyway, it follows a hero who gets a magic carpet. And this magic carpet transports him to a garden with a beautiful young woman. And they chat. They very quickly fall for each other. He lies, that he's wealthy. And, they want to get married. And then she gets kidnapped. So the hero goes on this journey to find his beloved, and he encounters a genie, At this point, I was like, okay, this is very Aladdin. And yeah, uh, it just felt it just felt weird that this was connected to the Howl's Moving Castle universe. But Sophie and Hal do make a cameo. I thought, that was a nice little Easter egg. But for the most part, I just didn't gel with this story as much. I also just didn't really like the hero, the way he would talk about his beloved, the way he would talk about women in comparison. It was just, maybe the book was just a bit dated. And then the third and final installment in the Hall universe, House of Many Ways. This follows a young girl who goes over to her wizard uncle's house. He has a magical house, he has these doors that lead to all different places. And most of the book is her being a little grumpy of having to be there and take care of things. And it's mostly just her trying to figure out how to take care of the house, trying to interact with the people in the house. She would rather go out into the kingdom and stay with the king, so that becomes a thing. The characters from Howl's Moving Castle do make an appearance. They have their cameo here as well. I really liked the idea of this one. It gave me Narnia vibes, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But to be honest, it was a little uneventful for me. I just wanted more to happen. I wanted more going on with the heroine. So out of the three books, Howl's Moving Castle was, not so surprisingly, my favorite. But overall, I really liked reading all three of these. Those are all the fantasy books I read in March. Knowing that I liked these, I'm curious if you guys can also recommend other fantasy books to me. I think it would be best if I stayed in YA, maybe even middle grade. Howl's Moving Castle was kind of middle grade, kind of YA in its writing. So I think I'd like to stay with that age group. But yeah, I would love to hear your recommendations. All right, let's move on to arcs and move on to some contemporary. First, we have Seyun and Dean Unscripted by Sujin Witherspoon. And this was Why Contemporary Romance. It is about a reality TV show called Force Feud. And these characters, Seyun and Dean, their parents were on the show. It's kind of like Survivor. Their parents were on the show and their parents both lost. So they want to get on this show and win for their parents. Seyun and Dean start off as rivals, but then they figure they can help each other out, so they become allies. But through some misunderstandings, people assume that they're hooking up, so in comes the fake dating trope. This book is very much a rom-com, emphasis on the com. It is hilarious. It is wacky. The banter is great. These two characters, the way they win at each other, it really felt like watching a reality TV show with teens. And though it could get a little frustrating, I did like the back and forth of like, are they really my ally? Are they going to betray me? Wait, are there actual feelings here? It was really giving Katniss and Peeta from Hunger Games, but in a wacky rom-com fashion, which I loved. I thought this was a really, really great book, and I immediately wanted to read Sujin Witherspoon's previous book, her debut, so I'll have to get on that. The next arc was While You Were Seething by Charlotte Stein. This is adult contemporary romance, and it follows a heroine who is working PR and is having to work with her arch nemesis from college, who is now a best-selling writer. And this arch nemesis, he always dedicates his books to his sweetheart. And it kind of reminded me of Lemony Snicket and how he would always have these dedications to Beatrice, I believe it was. So it's something like that. And she finds out that this sweetheart does not exist. As the characters are on the road on this book tour, the heroine takes on the role of his sweetheart, of the girlfriend that he dedicates his books to. And throughout all that, a real romance blossoms. And I will say, this is another book where the banter be bantering. It was almost bantering a little too hard. It was like, okay, I get it. Y'all calm down kind of situation. And then the romance went from 0 to 100 so quick. Actually it actually gave me whiplash. So I didn't really know how to feel about that. Once the relationship was gaining more traction, I was able to kind of latch onto it a bit more. But again, I think the trajectory of their relationship, it just felt off. Next was I Could Give You the Moon by Anne Liang. I've talked about Anne Liang's books quite a bit on my channel. She's probably one of my favorite YA authors right now. And this book is a companion novel to her debut, If You Could See the Sun. If You Could See the Sun followed a boarding school student who one day turned invisible, and she used that power to her advantage when it came to buying secrets from people. And then in this book, it follows that character's friend, her roommate. And she comes across a lake. And in the reflection of the lake, she sees visions of her future. And in this future that she sees, her love interest is supposedly trying to burn her house down. So, the heroine, Chanel, she figures the best way to stop this future is to get the love interest to fall in love with her. That's gotta solve all her problems, right? I would say it brings on more problems, but it also brings on a very swoony, rich girl, bad boy romance, touch her and you die type of romance. It felt like a K-drama or like a C-drama. It it also felt more mature than If You Could See the Sun. It's not spicy, but the romance just feels more intense, more fiery, and I really liked that. I liked seeing that in one of her YA romances. The last arc I read was Until We Meet Again by Lily Kim Chien. And this was a memoir and a graphic novel about Lily's life. It's from childbirth to young adulthood. And it follows her struggles with her parents arguing, her parents divorcing, them going through some messy custody battles. It deals with her mom's mental health struggles, her living with her father and bouncing from home to home, from Canada to China, and then eventually to the US for college. And it was beautifully illustrated. It was brutally honest. I really appreciated the topics she decided to tackle, talking about everything, you know? There's just something about seeing mental health issues depicted in graphic novels. This is something I really, really loved in Heartstopper. In that series, the character Charlie, he was going through OCD, going through an ED, and the way it was illustrated, like, I can't even explain. Like, as I was reading it, the way it hit me. And then similarly here, the way things were illustrated, just, it's magic. Like, it really is magic the way they do this. We've reached the end of my list. These last two were some recent releases that I read, starting with Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. I would say this is literary fiction coming of age. It is surrounding a young adult, but I'm not sure I would call it young adult fiction. It follows a 17-year-old girl who gets into a relationship with her high school teacher. And it is very blunt. It is very graphic. They have a full-on sexual relationship. It is toxic. At times, it is gross. It is weird. If you don't know, Jeanette McCurdy previously wrote the memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died. It was about her experiences being a child actor, of having an emotionally abusive mother. She was in the TV show iCarly, which was very big when I was growing up. And I thought that memoir was fantastic. That was equally blunt, honest. That writing style is very much carried on here with her first fiction novel. I just don't know if a lot of the themes hit the way they were meant to. I could see what she was trying to do with, like, the female rage, with mental health issues. But I don't know. I think the main issue was that I didn't connect to the main character. I didn't really know her beyond her obsession with her teacher and beyond her obsession with online shopping. I just didn't know who she was, so at times it was hard to sympathize. I also couldn't really get a grasp on the high school teacher, whether he was this evil, manipulative guy or if he was just this pathetic loser. it was hard to tell. But this is a very bold novel, and I still would really like to see what else she writes. Last but not least, we have And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. This is part of the Heartstrings series, the first being First Time Caller. I really liked First Time Caller. It was very Sleepless in Seattle. That one followed two folks in a radio station. This one follows a different character from the radio station and then someone from a rival TV station. They're both meteorologists. They both love the weather, both obsessed with the weather. And they team up to cover a snowstorm. The hero, Jackson, he's seen as pretty uptight. He likes his routines. He likes things a certain way. And you learn, like, why he is the way he is. He looks after his younger sisters. His mom is emotionally distant. And then on the other hand, his rival, Delilah, she's seen as maybe being too much, being eccentric, and just being a total distraction in Jackson's eyes. So he can't stand her. He is always complaining about her, while Delilah's just like, what's your problem, dude? This book and First Time Caller, this shit is my catnip. This is just pure rom-com goodness. It is like Sleepless in Seattle. It is like You've Got Mail. I just love the vibes. I love the banter. I love the depth with the characters. I love the connections with the characters. And it's so swinny. Alright, guys, those were my March reads. I thought it was really cool to try something different with some fantasy books. I will definitely add more to my TBR list. I need to read more. As much as I love contemporary and contemporary fantasy, I need to let more magic into my world, into my book space. I'm sure there's so much that I'm missing, so I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you all have a very lovely April full of reading and writing. Lots of writing for me as well. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.